Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Syngenta Canada, Alberta Wheat Commission, and C&M Seeds.
Joining us here at the Canadian International Grains Institute, we have Akriti Sharma. Akriti is the technical specialist for winter wheat here at SIGI. And when we look at winter wheat in Western Canada, we've seen acres decline in recent years. But from your perspective, what do you see as potential for this class on the prairies?
I think the potential is definitely there. We do see acres slowly creeping up. We were at an all-time sort of high around 2012 at about 600,000. And we're down to probably close to just under 300,000 now. Given that and said that, yes, the acres are coming back up very slowly. Definitely there is some work to be done in terms of marketing and education to grow this class within the agriculture value chain.
So marketing and education with end-use customers is where you're talking?
Yeah, this is definitely directed in the two-way stream. The upstream of it is our end user, which I think is more familiar with what the class can do and what its attributes are, as we have sold to some of these markets in the past as well. So they are very well aware of the presence of Canadian winter wheat and how good it is in terms of quality. But I think more work is actually needing to be done downstream in the value chain, and that's from a raw material, that's our growers, that's the grain companies, and sort of developing a strategy plan for the class that allows, maybe more lucrative contracts to be out there. And even just from more of an agronomic perspective, I think that's really going to start. That work is more on the growing end of it with the growers.
So do you think winter wheat is playing catch up versus some of the other classes, or that there's a renewed sense of maybe strategy or direction?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is that interest in it. Because there's a period and a time when I hear growers are growing red spring and growers also growing winter wheat, which we know is getting blended into red spring a lot of times. Even the prices are at par at times for red spring versus winter wheat. But some of the shortcomings is maybe having not a close by elevator that's taking delivery of that. Or they only want it in very small amounts. So there is definitely a challenge in that sense, I think.
So the goal is kind of to have this critical mass to make the logistics make sense throughout the supply chain?
Right, absolutely. Especially if it's in terms of us, providing it to overseas customers. Definitely we need to have a stronger presence in terms of its volume. One of the things that we are looking at trying to do is perhaps maybe have a pilot project be carried out through one of the grain companies, and then have an end user sort of work with us and give us sort of live feedback in terms of, okay, what are you experiencing in terms of the quality attributes that are presently there within the class. So that is sort of in the works, but again, we do need to have an exporter on board in order to carry that sort of project out even on a pilot scale level.
So that means at the elevator level they have to have enough winter wheat to fill a bin, and the customer overseas has to have enough supply to keep their plant running all year and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And maybe it's not something that we send 3,000 metric tons or 4,000 metric tons. Maybe we only start out with 1,000 metric tons, and maybe we make it sort of an IP program. In a sense where we have certain varieties within that pool, or just have one variety in that pool where the farmer, a chosen set of farmers practicing good agronomic practices and farming practices will, grow it, and we will use that sort of to send overseas and to see what that sort of pans out in terms of what the customer is seeing and using and how they like it or not.
So what kind of obstacles or steps need to be taken to get to that point?
It's, to me, in a sense, it's like a startup. In a sense, it really is, and it's in a very early stage. So having the strategy plan in place, which I'm working very closely with. Actually, yes, I put quite a bit of it together myself. I work with Lisa. Lisa is the director of international markets here. So I work very closely with her in terms of understanding, what the landscape is in Canada, for growing winter wheat. What is the demand out there? Okay, if farmers are out there that are interested in growing it and can't grow it, well, why? We want to know. What are their challenges in that? Is it an agronomic challenge? Is it a timing challenge? And then, we want to talk to the grain handling companies and maybe even get some of those insights from the growers or the personnel that are right at the elevator that deal with the day-to-day things in, handling a certain commodity and how fast throughput they need to kind of make it work. So really, we're working with the entire value chain, but having an objective plan, I think, set out forth, something that I think will sort of steer our ship a little bit better, because there'll be some unknowns in there, then that we will need other parties to sort of come to and then have their input on it as well, because it can't just move on its own. We have key players that need to be part of the plan in efforts to drive it forward.
So your role is still, or your position is still fairly new. Is this something that was a gap before this or was lacking?
Lisa, who was doing the position before me, was carrying this out. But I mean, yeah, it's still a very new thing, because I mean, this is only a couple of years now where there's actually funding being placed for sort of marketing personnel to be present here on site at Sigi. To carry forth the message on what needs improvement, and sort of do that through the entire value chain, from the grower to the grain handling companies and all the way to the end customer, and promoting its quality.
Yeah, to foster that communication, I guess.
Absolutely,
between all the steps.
and to have a consistent message. A message that doesn't change hands so much that by the time it gets to the end user or to the grower, it's totally different, right? So it's having consistency, and that's part of what the strategy will do. It will set out the groundwork. It will set out Sigi's position in terms of how we are going to approach the minor wheat classes. What is their value to us in the Canadian value chain? I mean, yes, CWRS is the king, but we need to have a more dynamic portfolio in the wheat classes, in a sense, too. I mean, I hope it never comes to that, but should there be a day where we can't rely on Red Spring, what is the diversity in our portfolio? So we really need to, I think, leverage that through the minor wheat classes.
Or a day when we maybe go away from the class system.
Absolutely. I mean, you hear it, they're buying a basis spec. We may not even have that, right? And they're already doing a lot of very modernizing things with the modernization project with CGC. We're starting to notice maybe there are varieties that growers love to grow because it's got great yield. But I mean, from a quality standpoint, if it's bringing that gluten down, that gluten stability, and that was one of the issues that customers were complaining, like that the gluten is down. It just doesn't have that strength, right? So it's understanding, okay, we got to work with this major class because we produce more of it, but we need to leverage it with some of the other minor ones in there as well.
All right. Thanks for your time and your insight, Akriti.
I hope I was helpful in answering your questions. Awesome.